All right, so today we are going to talk about the connection between watts and cost. We're going to calculate the amount of electrical power by an appliance, and we're going to use that same formula that we've been using. Current times voltage equals power. We're going to add a little bit to it. One thing that we're going to also think about, a kilowatt hour is 1,000 watts or 1,000 joules of energy per second. On an electric bill, you may have noticed, I don't know, how many of you have ever actually looked at your electric bill? Any of you guys look at it? Okay, well, someday you might take a look at that. Then you will, someday, when you have your own electric bill, you will. The term kilowatt hour, a kilowatt hour means that 1 kilowatt of power has been used for 1 hour. To determine the kilowatt hours of electricity used, we're going to multiply the number of kilowatts by the time and hours. Now notice, we have to have kilowatts, not just regular watts. So if we look in our lesson here, it says you use a 1,500 watt hair heater. It should say hair dryer, but okay. For 3 hours, how many kilowatt hours of electricity did you use? So some of you guys might know, the 1,500 watt hair dryer is a better hair dryer, or whatever you might say. Let's talk about what that means for your electric. The power of the dryer is 1,500 watts. The dryer was used for 3 hours, so they're going to a dance, I guess. That's a lot of hair drying. The number of kilowatt hours in this relationship is what we need to know. So we want to find out how much did it cost us, really. When we do the calculation, let's just slide over in our lesson so we can see that calculation. I know, I'm sorry. All right. When we do the calculation, we'd have 1,500 watts times this conversion. We're going to convert watts to kilowatts, so cancel out watts, come up with kilowatts. We have 1.5 kilowatts. We use 1.5 kilowatts times 3 hours, then we've used 4.5 kilowatt hours of electricity. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward example. We're going to come back down and go over so you can see the rest of the lesson. All right. So let's go ahead and go through these examples. I'm going to bring up my camera so that you can see what we're writing down. This will be what you turn in today too. So let's title it Electricity 4. We're going to call it Cost. And my camera does not want to focus today. Okay. So the first one says your oven has a power rating of 5,000 watts. So we're going to say 5,000 watt oven. And the first question says, how many kilowatts is this? Well, if I know that 1,000 watts equals 1 kilowatt, then I can figure out how many kilowatts is this. So I would say 5,000 watts times my conversion. Let's see, I have those here. What needs to go on the bottom? The 1,000 or the 1? The 1,000 needs to go on the bottom because I want to cancel out my watts. And so 5,000 times 1 is 5,000. Divided by 1,000 would be 5. Now, you guys are probably clever enough to realize 5,000 watts. If 1,000 watts equals 1 kilowatt, then I know that it's 5 kilowatts. And that's all fine and good for nice even numbers like that. But sometimes they're not quite that even. So let's look at B. If the oven is used for 2 hours to bake cookies, how many kilowatt hours are used? Okay, so I have 5 kilowatts times 2 hours. That equals 5 times 2 is 10. And I'm going to write it out so you know what you're writing in your notes. Kilowatt hours. That right there is what you get charged by. When you have an electric bill, you use so many kilowatt hours, and they charge you a certain amount of money per kilowatt hour. And that's the next question. Okay. So if your town charges 15 cents per kilowatt hour, what is the cost to use the oven to bake the cookies? All right, so we're going to take our kilowatt hours, 10 kilowatt hours times 15 cents per 1 kilowatt hour. Now see, we're using that charge right there, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. We're using that as a conversion because we're going to cancel out the kilowatt hours. We're going to be left with our money unit. So 10 times 15 cents, that is $1.50 to make the cookies. And so this kind of cost is what restaurants and bakeries have to add into their cost as well. Like, it's not free to have that oven on for whatever time, okay? So, like, that's something else. If you guys make something or you guys become crafty, that's something to think about too as you're entering into those kind of endeavors. So give me a thumbs up if that makes sense and you understand that completely. Okay, that's good. And let's go ahead and do let's go ahead and work through number 2 because there's a couple more a little bit complicated, a few other tricks in this one. So number 2 is talking about a 1200 watt hairdryer. Now we're calling it the right thing. And it's 10 minutes every day. All right. So the first question says, how many minutes do you use the hairdryer in a month? Assume that there are 30 days in the month. How would you figure that out? Times 30, right? So we're asked how many minutes a month. So we're going to go 10 minutes per day. Now notice, you guys can do this in your head, but what you're actually doing is you're using a conversion. So check this out. Days cancels, and 10 times 30 is 300, okay. But look at the units you have. Minutes per month. So you know that you did the work correctly. Okay, now, like I said, you guys can definitely do that in your head when it's these numbers like this. But when we're doing a conversion that's maybe a little more complicated, like if I said per year, 360, if that was 365 or not 10 minutes, we might need to go back to using that conversion a little better. Okay. All right. How many hours do you use the hairdryer in a month? How are we going to figure that out? We're going to do another conversion. So we take our 300 minutes per month, and we're going to say, all right, well, I know that there are, I want to get rid of minutes, 60 minutes in 1 hour. I know that there are, what does that say? That's fine. Okay, we just wanted hours. Sorry. So we're actually done there. So then my minutes would cancel and I'd have hours per month. Right? So I'm going to take 300 and divide it by 60. And I know that I can kind of do cheat math. I can take out a 0 and then 6. 30 divided by 6 is 5. So 5 hours per month. That's a long time. If you think about you do something 10 minutes a day, that's 5 hours of whatever you're doing. Imagine if that was practice for something. Okay. What is the power of the hairdryer in kilowatts? All right. So now it's asking us to go back, to our 1200 watts. 1200 watts. We're going to do that conversion again. 1000 watts is 1 kilowatt. Our watts are going to cancel. 1200 divided by 1000 is 1.2 kilowatts. All right. So you can kind of see where this is going. We're looking at our dryer and we're thinking, how much does it cost for me to use my hair dryer every month? All right. 1.2 kilowatts. D says how many kilowatt hours of electricity does the hair dryer use? So we're going to take 1.2 kilowatts times how many hours did I use it? 5 equals well, 6. Yep, 6. 6 kilowatt hours. And so now we're going to find out how much does it cost to use that hair dryer every month. If your town charges 50, that's a pretty common charge, 15 cents. It kind of fluctuates, but we're going to take our kilowatt hours. $0.15 per kilowatt hour. Okay, so 90 cents. So you run the hair dryer. You can't see that. All right. So we had to do 5 different problems to come up with how much does it cost to run the hair dryer. Give me a thumbs up if that made sense. All right. If that made sense, then you're sitting good for the rest of the day's work. So let's, hold on. You're going to submit at the end, okay? And actually, this Google Doc, if you want to keep going on your paper, that's fine, because when you open the Google Doc, it's kind of asking you to do the same thing that we just did. It just makes it look a little more complicated. Okay, because in the Google Doc, you're finding the power, finding the current, finding the kilowatts, the hours used per day, and then the cost per day. So you can use it in the data table, or you can keep going on your notebook. I don't care. I'm going to go on the notebook and show you how to do the refrigerator. And then we'll continue. But we're going to use those same kind of problems, okay? So let's think about what we had here. Okay, we had to know the watts. Then we found the kilowatts. Now, what happens if you're not told the watts? Is there any way that you could find the power used in your appliance? Do you remember our formula that we had the other day? Power equals I times V. Power is in watts. I is amps, and V is volts. So let's look at our refrigerator label. Okay. If we look at the refrigerator, we can see that it's a 5.2 amp refrigerator. And its source is 100 and needs 115 volts. Okay? It's a household refrigerator. So in order to find the watts, we are going to have to use our formula. So let's go ahead and we'll go through this one, and then you're going to do some on your own. Frid. And I spelled it wrong. Refrigerator. All right. So power equals IV. I'm looking for the power. So my I and my V, if I look right here is my amps, 5.2 amps. My volts are right here, 115 volts. I'm going to plug that in. So see, that number is not quite as easy. So we'll pull out our calculator and we'll say 5.2 times 115, 598 watts. Okay, now we can find out how much it costs to run our refrigerator. Okay. So you got to think, how long do you run your refrigerator? How many hours a day does it run? 24 hours a day. I hope it runs 24 hours a day for you. So we're going to go 24 hours is how we're going to run this thing for. All right, so now that we found that out, let's go back to what we did up here. We had watts. We're going to use hours, so we can kind of skip down here to where we need to do how many kilowatts is it? And then we're going to take our kilowatts times hours. So if it's 598 watts, we're going to have to find how many kilowatts is it. And that one, once again, is not quite as straightforward and easy as the examples. Okay. That's how many kilowatts we're going to use. And so if we look back at our example, that was C. D, we're going to go 1.2 kilowatts times 5 hours, or in our case, times 24 hours. $14.3. Okay, and so now we could figure a cost. And we're just going to use that 15 cents that we had before. It's a pretty standard. So 14 point. Okay, so $2.15 a day to run the refrigerator. In your bill, you have to multiply that by the 30 days. So if we were asking you what would you be charged, you'd go times 30. Okay. Is that right? I feel like that number is off. Yep. Okay. So give me a thumbs up if this makes sense. You're going to figure out how much does it cost to run the refrigerator for a day. All right. So you're going to follow those same steps that we did in our examples to come up with a cost per day for your item. Okay, and the items that you're going to do, I'll bring back the instructions at the end, or the examples here in the end, but you have a refrigerator label. Here's a television label. So you're given the watts on this one, 54 watts. Okay. And then you come down, here is a cell phone charger. In this case, you're given the volts and the amps. Okay, so you can use what's in this circle here. And actually, you would use, to input, to charge it, you could use between 100 and 240. It's easier to use 100. And then the 0.3 amps. The Chromebook, so what is your Chromebook actually using? Is your volts and your amps. Okay. And then that's what you're going to be turning in. So just for fun, we'll look at that maybe here in a second. But those are what you're going to do. You're going to find what does it cost per day for your Chromebook, for your cell phone to charge, your television label, and your refrigerator. Now, don't forget, on the refrigerator, come on, we had to think about how many hours a day do we use it. So for like your Chromebook, how many hours a day do you use it? How many hours a day do you charge your cell phone? It won't be 24 every time, right? So I'm going to put our examples up on the screen for you to see. And you are looking for the cost per day. Okay. Using this formula will be very important to find your watts, right? So I want you to try to do those other appliances, okay? And that's what you're going to submit today. I'll put this on there.